Hey everybody, I talk to a lot of people in all different situations out there and work with them and creating a comfortable retirement. And one of the most common things I find out there is people with, somewhere between say 250,000 to $750,000 in savings. They read all the media and it says they can't retire yet. They don't have enough money. And I've never understood that magical number that everybody has to at least have. I can tell you, I know people in New York that think there's no way you can retire on less than 5 million. Whereas there's plenty of people in the Midwest that can retire extremely comfortably on $500,000. So everybody's in a different situation, and it doesn't always have to do with how much you have saved. So, 5 steps to retire comfortably on 500,000. And 500,000 is arbitrary, less than what people think they are supposed to have, let's just say. All right, so here we go. The first thing I want you to do is think about maximizing your income. Social Security, when you're going to take your Social Security will determine how much your Social Security is going to be, as well as your working years. You got to have 35 years of actual credited income on that Social Security. That's what they're averaging. So we got to make sure that we've worked 35 years. If we're replacing zeros with income, then you're still drastically changing your Social Security. So make sure you work those 35 years and wait as long as you can. For a single person, waiting till 70 to take your Social Security is going to give you the most income. And if you're healthy, don't worry, the choice of waiting till 70 pays back by your early 80s. So it usually is a good idea if you're a healthy person in your 60s to wait as long as you can to take your Social Security. If you don't think you're going to live long, you're unhealthy, you've already had bouts with major issues, maybe you want to take early, I understand, but we're talking about people with limited savings. So in this case, we really want to promote waiting for as long as possible, delaying retirement. Then there's pensions, the same decisions there, really scrutinizing and understanding what your choices are on taking those pensions. And then if you don't have enough income to pay your living expenses, then you do have to consider some of those income annuities, and you have to be proactive. You've got to let those things work properly. Typically, you need a good 5 years before you need the income to do one of those income annuities. Okay, that's the optimal way. You get into one of those 5 years before you need the income, give it that opportunity to grow, and then give you that guaranteed payout. That seems to be the best sweet spot out there. All right, number 2, expenses. Okay, so again, these magical numbers, this amount of money you have to have saved, has nothing to do with the income and the budget, and that's more important than the amount you saved, right? Because if your budget says you need 5,000 a month and you only have 3,000 a month, then you have to rely on your savings. But if it's the opposite, you only need 3,000 a month to survive and you have 5,000 a month, you don't need to rely on that savings as much. So that's the point of this. So you need to scrutinize. If you're retiring on limited savings, even if you have extra income for enjoyment, you have to scrutinize your budget. Go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Nowadays, with all these subscriptions and all this stuff that just automatically charges us, we do need to go through this. This doesn't mean we need to cut out things we enjoy. You should still have your internet, your cable, all that kind of stuff. But going into retirement with debt is not a good thing. Going into retirement without a shelter over your head that you have to pay monthly for is not a good thing. You need a house that's paid off. I don't care if it's a condo or a townhouse or a manufactured home, but you have to own your shelter. Okay? Very important, because if you don't own your shelter, you are so heavily exposed to inflation and you're going to run into a problem later in life. You might have enough income now, but your income typically is not going to keep up with inflation. I know we get cost of living adjustments, but they're not designed to completely fix your budget when we see inflation. So no rent and no debt. Shop your insurances. Make sure that you pay attention to that. Every 3 years or so, it's a good idea to shop your insurances, whether it's your health insurances, Medicare supplements, things like that, or your home and auto insurances. Make sure those are in line. Some people haven't paid attention to that for 30 years. That's a problem. You need to look at those and make sure that you're not overpaying. Review and scrutinize all those bills. Again, think about all of those subscriptions that you're paying for. Reliable car, okay? Reliable car. Go into retirement owning, not paying for, owning a reliable car. And then, oops, there's one that went down below. Consider alternatives. And here's what I mean by consider alternatives. When you go to the grocery store, you can buy the store brand or the commercial brands, okay? Things like that. But it also includes vacations. Sometimes some countries are on sale. If you want to travel internationally, you're going to find those pretty quickly. You're going to realize where the inexpensive places are because countries will subsidize air flights, making sure their flights are much cheaper. Sometimes if you live, here in Arizona, there's direct flights to a lot of different places, but sometimes you'll notice, whoa, flying there is super cheap right now. I've seen direct flights to the Big Island in Hawaii for round trip under $400. And when they're trying to create more tourism, they subsidize those flights, and you see the prices of those going down. So there's always alternatives out there. We have choices out there. It's so important to know that we have those choices. And so start considering all of those additional choices. Number 3, consider where you live, right? It's an extreme eye-opener for a lot of people. I have a friend that I met here in Arizona, but he had just moved from New York, and it was just night and day. He grew up his life in New York. Everything was the cost that it was, and he showed up in Arizona, and he's like, holy cow, it's so inexpensive here. Well, I also have clients that have moved from Arizona to the Mid-South and realized, holy cow, it's another level cheaper there. That's what this heat map is here. You kind of look at the dark blues and realize that's really where inexpensive living is. Not only is housing cheaper, but everything is cheaper there. So we do have to consider that. And then a lot of people are now thinking globally instead of just within the United States. The heat map, when you look at different countries and places to live that are much less expensive than Arizona or anywhere in the United States for that matter, is Mexico's usually high on the list. We have several clients that have moved to Mexico and just absolutely love their life down there. Ecuador's high on the list. Costa Rica is extremely popular right now. We got some good friends, sold their business, and they're looking at moving down there possibly. I have clients in Portugal, several clients in Portugal, Panama, Vietnam. Understand there's a lot of wonderful places out there. And if you haven't been to Portugal, I mean, it's really not much different than the US. It's just less expensive. Gas is more expensive there, but most everything else is much, much, much less expensive. And then there's the housing. What are you living in, right? Think about condos and townhouses and think about that hard expense, the HOA fees that you have to do, the single family dwelling. Then you start thinking about the maintenance that you're responsible for there. Manufactured homes, sometimes you're leasing the land. You don't really own the land that you're on. So start looking at those expenses and understanding how they're going to relate to your future. So the whole idea is scrutinize this, get you in the most stable position possible. Don't want you renting. You don't have control. And if something that is that big of an expense in your budget doubles in cost, we got a problem. If milk doubles in cost, who cares? It's not going to change your retirement. Now, if everything doubles in cost, we got problems. But when a $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month expense doubles, that's a big problem. We got to knock that out, which is why we always want to own our residence when we go into retirement. Number four, restricted access. This has to be understood. Okay, when you have limited savings, we can't rely on that savings to fund our regular retirement. We can't. If you do, you're not going to enjoy your retirement. You might as well continue working. Okay, so here's the thing. When we look at our limited savings, we head off into retirement. We've made sure our budget is right. We've made sure, income's paying the bills and we have a reasonably enjoyable retirement. Then your savings is then there for emergencies, one-time expenses. The occasional property taxes came in. They're a little higher this year. I just need a little help this month to pay that one-time expense. Maybe a new car. Okay. Usually once you retire, you got a couple of new cars that coming at you in the future. Maybe one, most people don't make it through their entire retirement on the same car they retired with. So those one-time expenses, that's what the savings is for. And then I call it the occasional fun. We're going to do a big blowout with the whole family. We're taking the whole family on a cruise. Okay, one-time event, big hurrah. That's fantastic. So those occasional, not every single year type of things, that's what it's there for. Okay, so we change how we think about this savings and we limit it to those uses because we got to remember income for the most part is stagnant. Yes, you get cost of living adjustments, but they're not going to keep up with inflation. So we got to make sure that we understand we do need to still kind of limit our use to this savings so we can still be there as things do get more expensive in the future. And then the last one I want you to think about is how you're going to invest that savings, right? I call it purposeful investing. Everybody's in a different situation. We now have to change our priorities. Some people have a strange mentality. I'm limited in savings, so let's put it all in the stock market and get aggressive growth. That'll change things. That'll fix it. Well, I'm sorry, but that's really not how you should be handling this. It's going to cause a lot more problems than anything else. Even if you hit it right and the market just goes up and up and up, the reality is you look at the last 10 years and we've had a lot of very violent swings, even though year to year it looked like the stock market just went straight up. But you look at that pandemic swing, you look at the end of 2018, the huge drop off that we had at the end of 2018, we have had some significant turbulence. And when somebody looks at their savings and it's limited and it gets cut by 40%, don't you think you're emotionally going to react in that situation when you're already starting with limited savings? So we do have to be very careful about how we're going to invest this money, okay? You earning an extra 20% this year does not change your retirement. I'm not going to tell you, oh, well, now you can rely on your savings to fund your retirement. It's not a switch like that. It doesn't get flipped that easily. So your first priority is don't lose it, right? We need to have a core of safe investments. So when we do have that emergency, when we do want to pull some money out of here to buy a car, we do have a place we can pull from that is not hurt by the turbulence in the stock market. Okay, our goal is to try to keep up with inflation. We're limiting the use of this funds because we have limited funds. So we want to try to keep up with inflation so it can be there in the future. And we need to be reasonable about our access. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have only the years that the market goes up 20% and none of the risk of the stock market, okay? So we got to make sure that we're reasonable about access and you plan that out. Make sure you have access to it at least annually. Preferably you have access to a good chunk of that money every year, all year long. So that way when there's an emergency, we don't have to wait 3-4 more months till that CD expires or silliness like that. The combination of safe investments you should always have access to at any point throughout the year. So always reasonable. Now, I'm not saying you can't put money in the stock market. I'm simply saying that the safe investments become the core of the portfolios, typically 50% or more, okay? And safe investments nowadays, especially right now, well, interest rates are wavering a bit, but you could easily lock in the 5% range. That's pretty fantastic. But there's also things that are indexed interest rates, so much more flexible, indexed to the stock market, so you can earn when things are going well and not when things are going bad. You just earn nothing. So they protect your money, but help us keep up with inflation. So there's lots of great choices on top of bonds and CDs and all the other traditional stuff out there. Lots of great choices out there for safe investments, especially when these interest rates are hanging on. We've had a little movement downward, but we're still there. All right, I hope that helps. I hope that inspires people, right? The whole goal is to make sure we figure out how you can have a comfortable retirement. It's the whole idea of all this. I only have worth in that sector, right? 20-year-olds I'm happy to help, but I don't want to be charging them fees. It's ridiculous. They don't need a future of 40 or, a future of 40 years of fees. That's ridiculous. What good advisors are there for is those times of need, like that transition into retirement retirement. Typically, once you get then through that required minimum distribution age into your 70s, you get settled in, then it's really just managing the taxation and all that kind of stuff. So it gets a little easier. But that transition into retirement, oh man, that is where a good advisor can actually be worthwhile. And so I'm always happy to help out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We create new videos every single week, and I've got a whole family of companies that are going to start adding into this, some CPAs and some other people as well. So hopefully this is a wonderful place to get educated about everything in finance that's related to your personal finances and investing and retirement and taxation and all those wonderful things. If you want to meet with me for any reason, yourinvestmentcounselor.com. Always happy to help out. There's a free 30-minute meet and greet, or you could just book hourly appointments with me. I opened that up because I truly believe a lot of people just need help, need guidance, and don't need somebody to constantly charging fees from their portfolio. Full Classes, FPFEAZ.org is a nonprofit organization I run in Arizona. The whole idea of these classes is to be able to provide a good, more well-rounded on every subject. I do a different topic every single month and give you 3 or 4 different opportunities to view those classes live. And then certainly give us a call if we can help out. Comment, subscribe, do all those wonderful things, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again.